Can I get a man for calling all beings? Yes.
What's up?
I'm your host, DJ, and you see what kind of beautiful peoples I got surrounded with right here. To my, I guess he's to my left, to my right. Yeah, my left hand, right. We're doing the Brady Bunch. Look down. Where's Marsh? Money Nathan, the co-creator, executive producer, who done produced every damn thing you see here. Money Nathan.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Happy Tuesday. It's a whirlwind of a week here, and this is going to be an awesome show. So thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight. We're really excited to get into it.
Yep. Oh, hi. And guess what? Julie's in the chat. Hi, Jules.
Hey, what's up, Jules?
You're early. Maybe, do you have a mimosa? I don't know. What's going on? And Dope Nose is in the house. What's up, Holmes? All right, next, one of the original gangsters, a mental health therapist, counselor, all this kind of good stuff, a mom, and an all-around awesome human being who we know as Debs.
Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Happy almost 4th of July.
All right.
Jazz hands again, right, Debs? Right, we got it.
You know I'm doing them, right? When you do them, I actually am. You can see them, can't you?
Mm-hmm.
We're connected like Courtney connected. But I just said her name. The curly-haired one who can't decide how much she loves Alaska, Montana, or the farm in Pennsylvania. I don't know. I don't even know where she is right now. Courtney,
I'm in Alaska. Okay. But I'm heading back to Montana. So talk about whirlwind. That I am the little whirlwind.
You are.
And I don't know if I sent you that contract to DocuSign that says, I will not hunt for Sasquatch in Alaska. Please, if you just put your electronic signature on that, that way Nathan, Debs, and myself, we know that you're going to be safe if you wait until you're in Montana or Pennsylvania to look for Sasquatch. Is that fair?
I'm going to go find Jim, down in Colorado and do my safety Sasquatch, down there. But I will say, when I've been here, I've seen 5 bears just around my house. So yeah, and one little cub was here just a couple of days ago. I put that video up on Facebook. He was trying to get into the car. So he is a naughty little black bear.
See, he's just getting ready to drive. That's all.
Let's practice for the driver's exam. Driving schools are all the rage of these days for 16-year-olds, apparently. Nathan's probably thinking about that right about now.
I am dealing with it, yes.
So, all right. He's like, no, guess what, man? You're not driving my SUV, man, my Rivian. Anyway, no, it's not a Rivian. It's a, is it a Rivian?
It is a Rivian.
What is Rivian? That's right, yeah. How could you forget? The front end is unforgettable. All right, party people. So this gentleman right here, so probably reached out to him like a year or so ago. I think a lot of people reach out to this gentleman to come on their show. He goes on TV shows. He goes to people's properties, as he was just telling us back in the green room, to investigate situations that they're having and kind of help them to deal with sort of activity that's happening on their property. And I'd actually like to get a sense of what some of that activity is. It all paranormal, or is it all what he believes is non-human intelligence? So we'll get into that with him. But this brother right here is the OG from Skinwalker Ranch. You know what I'm saying, Nathan? The original gangster. He done worked at the Nellis test range. He worked at Nellis. He worked at A51, homie. 5-1. What do you like me now? Put your hands together for Mr. Chris Bartel, my USAF brother. Woo!
Oh, man. Thank you for the intro. Appreciate it.
Can I get a amen?
Amen.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, my goodness. I love the energy.
Thank you, brother. We love your energy too, man. I think one of the first things I ever said to you was, I heard you on a show, and I can't recall. So this is going back. This is well over a year ago now. And you and I both know kind of what the Air Force culture is.
Hmm.
And it's a culture we love, but it's also a culture in some cases that we'll be critical of, because I've heard you do it and I've done it. And it's kind of like that closed-minded, you know, if it doesn't fit in this kind of box, it's weird, right? And you had leaned into some of these modalities that you spoke of earlier, like saging areas and things that, like, kind of like that you and Carl are into, despite completely different backgrounds, that you've come together on a human level.
Mhm.
And I just love that, because I don't know about you, but I don't meet a lot of our USAF brothers and sisters that fall in that category. Maybe more so now, but probably not when we were active.
Yeah, I agree. I think more so now for sure. But back then, you're right. There was definitely a different type of culture back then for sure.
It's more diverse.
Yeah.
And so just to let you know, we like to go move slowly into these interviews. We don't want to like sort of come in too fast. And so Nathan, I can't hold it together for this one.
Is that your way of
talked
teeing me
about
up next or what? I don't know. Where are you going with that?
No, go ahead, Nathan, man. Take it away, because I can't even do it. You know the question we were going to ask Chris, so go ahead.
I'm sure that I do. I'm going to mess this up. So Chris,
Where are the damn?
where are the aliens? Yeah, no, that's the deep end, right? That's where we want to
Sorry,
jump right in.
All right, go ahead, man.
No, we're going to get into that for sure. So,
Yeah.
First of all, I was talking to my kids tonight, and I was telling them, you know, I'm speaking with somebody who has actually worked Area 51, who's worked at Skinwalker Ranch. You know, you've got this background in the Air Force, you've got a training in security and all host of different things. I wanted to know, with both of those locations, what did you feel that you were the best prepared for, and what did you feel that you were the least prepared for?
I would say definitely best prepared for when I worked for the DOE and 51 in the Air Force, but least prepared for was Skinwalker. I went out there with a different mindset of like more of a security mindset, and it was a whole different ball game out there. You know, at first, probably the first week and a half, I wrote the place off as a complete joke, like there was nothing out there. It wasn't really until the second week where I had an experience that kind of changed my perception a little bit about where I was at, what I was dealing with. And you know, my background is very militant. I've worked in a lot of organizations throughout the years, so my professional background has always been in protective services or law enforcement or security investigations, etc. But spiritually, I'm more of a spiritual person by how I was raised by most of my mother, who was raised up in Indian reservations in the Southwest, and she's Cherokee. So at a very early age, she taught me about meditation and connecting to the ground and all this stuff that I really didn't put in practice at all until I got out to Skinwalker Ranch. And then it was probably after the first year out there, I started connecting more spiritually to the property and having experiences and stuff. Not a lot, but a few that were very interesting.
That's awesome,
Amazing.
man. Go ahead, brother.
I'm going to pass it off to
Yeah.
Deb. I know she's got questions, so I'm going to pass it off to her.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask, because you said that if you think that starting those spiritual practices while you were out there engaging with the ranch increased your phenomenon experiences.
Yeah, I think if you project, you project a negative energy or a dark energy, you're going to get that back. But if you project a more positive energy, you're going to get a positive outcome. And I saw that with other individuals on my team that would approach the ranch in a more negative mindset and have a negative outcome, or the fear factor of being scared out there. And then, of course, the first year I was out there, it was definitely not what I was used to on a security aspect. But when we went to one-man patrols out there alone, you got to connect to the property on a whole different level. Or you can choose just to stay inside the trailer and do your normal stuff. But connecting to the property was about, you put in what you get what you put in. And I feel like if you invest your energy in a negative way, you're going to get a negative outcome. And I always say, when it comes to Skinwalker Ranch or anywhere that you went to Basin or anywhere, actually anywhere, if you're out in the wilderness, if you stare at darkness long enough, it's going to stare back at you. And I learned that during my time on Skinwalker, and it kind of evolved over the years. The first year I was out there, like I said, was kind of sketchy, but by year 4, 5, 6, it was like another home to me. And that's why, like even now, I consider that place like a second home. I feel like I'm almost soul bound to that location. I spent so much of my time and energy out there trying to explore the property. And yeah.
I was going to say, before we hand it off to Courtney Connected, when I heard you on a show talk about that they had you out there by yourself, from a safety perspective, that really pissed me off.
Yeah.
That they didn't have a second person out there. I was like, if that was Bigelow, I don't know who it was, but whomever it was violated any sort of safety protocol. And just, right. I can't, I'm trying to think of a better word other than it pissed me off. But when I called Debs, like that was my reaction, is that that's unsafe.
It was looking back at it now, we were lucky none of us got severely hurt out there. And on top of that, now you lose a secondary witness to events. So if you have an individual out there, they can make up any stories and there's nobody to fact check them. So that was an issue with some other individuals as well. Not everybody, but also you're right. The safety and security was a lot to put on your shoulders out there for 2 weeks, because not only we were in charge, I think there's a big misconception that we were just security out there. Well, for Bass, we were a lot more than just security. We were the ones conducting the investigations of Skinwalker Ranch. We were the ones doing the experiments of Skinwalker Ranch, and also, yes, protecting the property, which at that time was about 1,000 acres, because Bigelow leased the land around them. So we had more areas to reach, which was great because I can go out and explore and stuff. But we had a bunch of stuff that we were responsible for. And, you're out there alone working 24-hour operations for 2 weeks, and there's no days off, obviously. And you had to kind of adjust your security mindset of like, okay, I have to get some type of sleep to operate out here. So, my average day would start around 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, and I would feed the dogs, do the daily report from the night before, and then pretty much pack up a ruck full of food and stuff and go hiking all day. And then come back home and Skype with my wife and child, and then prepare for nighttime operations, and then we're in VGs and do the whole gambit all over again until about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And it was like that every single day for the whole 6 years. The first year we had 2 people, but then after 2011 we went to 1, and it was definitely it took a while. It took a lot to get used to. But coming from a military background, the whole mindset, work more with less, is kind of the motto. So that's just kind of how it was, and you just adjusted with it.
Yeah, I won't go any further on that because I'll just get mad. Courtney Connected, go ahead, my friend.
Hey, Chris. I'm just so excited that you're here tonight, and I have so many questions, but I know I'm not going to get to ask all of them. So I wanted to ask one that's probably pretty unusual, but a lot of times you hear from people like remote viewers, people who are in SRI, things like this, that they would sometimes get precognitions, before they go in for targets and things to actually do remote viewing. So I'm just wondering, did you ever feel like you had some kind of like precognitive awareness when you were on Skinwalker Ranch? Because you are more spiritually minded, this is why I'm asking this. I know you're open to it. Like of the day ahead, or that something would be about to happen when you were there, like pickups is what I call them, or promptings. Yeah. Did you ever have promptings before your shift or before the days before you got there?
Yeah, there was times out there where that you can just feel something was off or something was about to happen. Like you can feel it in the air, the electricity or whatever. Just something. And really the big indication for us was watching the dogs' behavior. If the dogs were acting really suspicious, that kind of put me in a mindset of like, okay, what am I going to encounter tonight on patrol? Or what are they seeing that I'm not seeing? But yeah, there was times where almost like a sixth sense, like something was going to happen. And sometimes things did, and sometimes things weren't. But we also, while I was out there, we conducted remote viewing experiments for a small limited time frame out there. and which was pretty fascinating. At the time, I wasn't sure what it was until years later. I found out it was a remote viewing experiment, and we never got the results of our experiments, which I always thought that was kind of bizarre. But yeah, we did that for, I talk about it in some other podcasts, but there was a time for a couple of years where I would sit in a lawn chair inside Homestead 2 alone with a list of questions and EVP sessions, and ask questions and try to make some type of contact with whatever is out there in hopes to have some type of, I don't know, conversation or what. But looking back at it, I tell people that and they think it's crazy, and it was crazy back then. But like I said, you kind of just adjust with that. But yeah, you're right. There were some times where it felt like something was off, and then there's sometimes where there'd be a dead silence on the ranch, like not even a bird. And it felt like you were walking in a void, basically. It was very bizarre. So, and other times most of the time it was just normal ranch behavior, nice out, birds are chirping, dogs are playing. But there were overlapping times where something strange was going on, for sure. Trying to document that was very, very hard.
I want to get we got a couple good questions from the chat, so we want to get those in. This is our chat moderator, Julie, the brilliant one. And if you can read that, Courtney.
Chris, do I remember you finding petroglyphs at Skinwalker Ranch?
I never found any petroglyphs at Skinwalker Ranch during my time. I found lots of artifacts, which was my big focal point the whole time. I really believe it's the indigenous history that holds the key to a lot of this stuff. I believe specifically at Skinwalker Ranch and places like Blind Frog Ranch and throughout the basin, when you find locations that have known paranormal activity, you don't have to look very far to find evidence of occupation, that there was people going out there for a long time. And specifically at Skinwalker Ranch, I found areas out there, areas of interest with abundance of artifacts that I used to have a map of the property. And every time I found an artifact, I would take a picture and a GPS location of that artifact. And I was discovering that there was a connection between people having experiences or some type of event, and nearby was some type of area of interest or abundance of artifacts. So I believe it's the indigenous history, frequency, energy, and vibration that's displaced naturally in the environment. And then when we walk around out there, our frequency, our energy kind of taps into that. And if you're not prepared for that, you can have a negative situation or a positive situation. And for me, it was more of a positive situation. I almost felt like I was being guided to find some of this stuff because it was ultra important. But to my surprise, I was documenting the stuff on the daily reports for a while. And then I received an email one day in all capital letters to stop reporting the artifacts, that it wasn't important. And it really pissed me off because I was like, no, it's absolutely important because it's hard evidence. And this is how important that evidence is. I found a couple artifacts, one in particular in the Eastern Valley that dates back to the Paleo Indians. So we're talking 10,000 years ago. So for 10,000 years plus, there was people naturally drawn to that location, and at Blind Frog Ranch as well. And it might be the magnetic anomalies that were there from a leftover meteorite that hit through the whole basin. It creates this magnetic interference that James Keenan, a buddy of mine who is a researcher out there, he discovered these magnetic anomalies using magnetometers and stuff. And it's from these meteorites that are displaced throughout the whole basin. But the indigenous cultures back then probably learned about these places and maybe saw some type of manifestation of orbs or some type of maybe natural phenomena that they viewed as spiritual, and they evolved with that. And they connected to the land and they stuck around for a while. I know specifically across from Skinwalker Ranch, there's a location where people used to go there and perform ceremonies and do like fire dances and stuff like that, and do like sweats and stuff and have spiritual experiences. And they'd watch the valley of Skinwalker. So all these places are connected, and it's the indigenous history that's connected to all this stuff. And that's really my focus about a lot of this stuff. And I'm still learning too about, talking to tribal members. And I met with some people in New Mexico who reached out to me, and I've been working with them to do a little more understanding of what it all means. Because I think it's the all indigenous ways and those cultures that had it right. They were truly connected to the earth and the universe, versus we are very disconnected in society now. We're totally opposites. And we're trying to, I think all of us here are trying on that path to get back to discovery and understanding of what we call the phenomena, what they just consider part of their culture. So it's very fascinating for me. So this last trip to Utah, I was able to take my sons with me and let them experience and tap into that frequency as well. So it was great.
This question fits perfectly. This comes from Dope Nose in the chat, and just in a second here, we'll shout out everybody in the chat. But Dope Nose, Nathan, please, would you read that one, sir?
Sure. It says, pure speculation. Does Chris feel the Native Americans utilized the property because it had special properties, or did their focus on the land cause it to become special?
I think both. I think they discovered these locations that have some type of magnetic anomaly that they may have felt naturally drawn because these people were connected to the earth. So it's almost like being guided to these locations with the magnetic anomalies that's in the ground. And then over time, their energy gets invested into the environment as well. We're talking, thousands of years of these people being there and operating the land. Was it just because of it was good hunting grounds or abundance of resources? Possibly. But you can feel it when you go out to these locations, especially in the Uinta Basin, that history is just there everywhere you go. And I really believe that's a big indicator for a lot of the stuff that's been reported over the years. I'm not trying to say that my narrative is the answer to everything. I'm just saying it's an added layer of many layers when it comes to the Uinta Basin. There's a lot of stuff going on out there. But for me personally, I believe it's the indigenous history that's the key to all this stuff. And not just there, but other locations throughout the United States that have, like the Bradshaw Ranch or Stardust Ranch or Mount Wilson Ranch. I was just at Mount Wilson Ranch last year, a year and a half ago. And once again, massive amounts of artifacts out there, what we consider evidence of occupation. And I'm actually working with a guy now out of Utah named Chris Roberts, who this is his forte, this is his background. And he's helping me validate a lot of the artifacts I'm finding at these locations and dating them. And some of these go back thousands of years to the Paleo Indians and to the Desert Archaic Indians, which then became the Fremont and the Shoshone and everything. This evolution of humanity that was there, evolving with the spiritual aspect of these locations. So it's super fascinating for me. And along the way, I have my camera with me. I do my best to photograph and document and share with other people because I want people to experience the beauty of that place as well.
And Duncan, we'll get your question in there. And so that question was basically what came first, the chicken or the egg? And the answer is we don't know. We can only speculate. And guess what? That's why we're here, because it's fun to speculate about the phenomenon, right? Hold your applause till the end, please. So thank you, Lasso. I don't know if we've had you in here before. We'll get. I think Chris sort of just answered your question. If he can tag onto that, I think, right? Didn't you answer that? That you have you had those artifacts dated by anybody?
Yeah,
yes.
by Chris Roberts. He's actually a trained professional in dating some of these artifacts, and he's been kind of helping me with not school, but teach me as well. A recent one that I found at Blind Frog Ranch is a northern side notch arrowhead point, and there's a graph that shows the timeline of like Paleo, Archaic, and then modern, basically. And this arrowhead fits in the 7,000 year mark range for Desert Archaic, which is fascinating. But basically, he's my go-to guy for a lot of the stuff, and he's been doing this his whole life. So it's something that I've been doing since I was a young child. My grandfather out here in Kansas was really big in the native cultures and stuff, and he would take me out on Sundays to go look for arrowheads. So he would get permission from all the local farmers and ranchers, and we walked the creek beds in their properties in the fall, and we would find stuff. And he acquired this huge collection over the years, and he donated half of that to a nearby college, and then I got the other half when he passed away. And so in my office here at home, I have it all shadow boxed and documented, and it's just fascinating to me. If you think about the people back then, for me, it's super fascinating because if you think about the culture of individuals, of humans back then, they're investing their energy in making stone tools or weapons, and then using those to take the life force of an animal and then to feed their families. It's the whole cycle of energy displacement, basically. And I feel like some of these artifacts hold that energy. You can feel it. There was a time at Skinwalker Ranch where I literally said out loud, "What do you want me to show them?" And I walked about 20 feet and I found a perfect white arrowhead point that dates back to the archaic period. And it looked like it was just made that day. It had been laying on the ground for years because it was almost stuck to the ground when I picked it up. So I feel like there's a consciousness connection to some of this. Like, I really believe, specifically at Skinwalker Ranch, if you're not a genuine person, you're going to get exposed and you're going to get your card pulled. I really believe that. And I don't know. I keep saying that the ranch, it's crazy. It's crazy for me to see like there's a TV show now about this stuff.
Yeah.
It really is mind blowing for me. It's like, it's cool because I have so many memories out there and I get to see it on TV and I can smell the sage when I watch the show, and I miss the desert sunsets and all this stuff brings back memories. But also it's great because it's bringing people to the basin so they can experience some of this native culture that's out there. And it's everywhere. It's a McConkey Ranch, McKee Springs, up at Blind Frogs. It's just an abundance everywhere. And it's just, I think it's great for people to go out there and connect.
I was going to say, I just looked up Blackwater Draw, and they're around that same time period, about 13,000 years ago, with those artifacts. I thought you dated them by looking on the back, and it just said made in 10,000 BC.
That might be one way of doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they say that on there. Because that way, we don't even have to go hire somebody. We can just go, look, see, it says it right there, how old it is.
Yeah.
But anyway.
It's amazing.
So I asked this question of your colleague, Thomas Winterton.
Yeah.
I didn't get a denial of it, or maybe I got an I don't know. You cabbies might remember. But I'm curious what your observations have been relative to any sort of Bigfoot or Sasquatch activity in and around even the general area that you're aware of, or was there any, in fact, sightings while you were there?
I never had a sighting, your typical Sasquatch sighting that people report. But while I was out there this last time, I was talking to James Keenan about experience. I was talking to Chris Roberts about an experience that I had on the ranch in the wintertime. And he was kind of like, hey, that might have been like a Bigfoot. And I'm like, well, I don't know, but maybe. I guess I'll talk about it here. It was in the wintertime of, I think, 2013 or 14. I can't remember the exact date. And the dogs would normally go on patrol with me everywhere, what time, rain, sleet, snow, weather. But this night, I did a patrol to the east gate. And there was very limited of where I can go because there was about a couple feet of snow on the ground. And we have some igloos at the east gate that the dogs stay in. And so I go to the east gate to just do a check to see, make sure nobody's messing around up there. And the dogs stayed there at the igloos because it was warm. So I walked back to Homestead 1 to call it a night. And as I'm approaching the gate to walk into Homestead 1, I get this sensation of like the wet dog sulfur smell, like really putrid smell, like almost like rotting flesh. And I remember kind of looking towards the east, towards Dog Run 1, or what they call Bait Pen 1 now. It was dark, super dark, but I felt like there was something more dark there, standing there. And it was big. And I couldn't really make it out, but I could feel like there was something dark there. And then in the darkness, and I got this really bad feeling like something was watching me. And I just went, nope, not today. And I went right inside Homestead 1, turned the lights all off, and kind of sat there on the couch with my gun on my lap, just waiting to see what was going to happen. And then eventually went to sleep. But something was weird about that event, and the dogs weren't with me. If the dogs would have been there, they would have probably smelled the same thing. Or maybe that's why they stayed at the east gate. I don't know. But I definitely felt like something was there. Well, I explained that to Chris, and he said, hey, that's kind of typical of Sasquatch experience. And I'm not very familiar with it. And I was like, whoa, that's interesting. It's interesting. It definitely was weird because it was, nice and cold out. Everything was frozen. So what would be smelling like rotting flesh or, it's just weird.
Yeah,
and that's
you wouldn't.
And that's
that is consistent with the Bigfoot from all that with guests that we've had on that are Bigfoot experiencers or researchers.
Yeah.
Everything you said there is consistent with those experiences.
The next morning when the sun came up, I went out to that area, expecting to see some type of tracks or whatever. I didn't find anything that I would consider, out of the ordinary. I found normal animal tracks, but nothing crazy. But something was there. It was weird.
That's really cool. I'm glad I finally got to hear one, because we hadn't heard about any, and we were just curious. But let me pass it to Money Nathan. And first of all, hello Linda Thompson, an absolute legend that's in the chat here, Julie's friend, and just a legend in the UFO community. And after Nathan goes in late, we will, after we have another round, we'll get and hit all those questions in the chat. So thank you everybody. Like, subscribe if you take that time. We greatly appreciate it. Money Nathan, sir.
Yeah, Chris. So I'm fascinated by just you as a person. I think you're an interesting mixture of qualities. And as an example of that, when I think about your photography, I love photography as well. I love your work. And as a photographer, you're looking at the subject, kind of in an objective way, but also in an emotive way. And the idea is that when you're taking that picture, it means something to you, maybe even not even at that time, but later on, it kind of becomes apparent. But it also speaks to the person that is looking at it. So there are these sort of multifaceted layers to the art of photography. So in the same kind of way, I'm curious to get your thoughts on what we kind of call disclosure, right? So that there are these like really objective elements. There's like this almost like very cerebral track that everyone seems to be focused on. Let's find the craft, let's find the bodies, let's understand all the nuts and bolts in the science. And then there's this other track, and you kind of hinted at this a little bit, this consciousness track that is less understood, but almost like re-emerging now in the 21st century. We're rediscovering our connection to the way the world really is, or the way nature operates, are reconnecting with that in a way. So I'm curious, like when you observe this entire sort of narrative as it's playing out, how are you feeling about it? Do you think that it's going in a good direction? Do you think that it's going to bear any fruit? What are your takes on the entire kind of disclosure process?
That's a good question. And nobody's really asked me that before, but I don't know. When I take a step back and look, I always try to ground myself on my professional background, work at some of these locations. And I think maybe disclosure is about an individual's path to awakening or evolving spiritually. I think that's the key for this conversation, is to have these deep conversations about the possibility of something outside of our realm of reality that we're not familiar with, and helping us change as individuals and operate more on a positive frequency. I think that's the key to a lot of the stuff. If people understood that the amount of positive energy produced on a daily basis is what springs your celestial spirit forward into the future, I think the world would be as a whole a different and more better place to live. And if we were doing that, if there was a species, let's say an alien species, that wanted to make contact with us, that would be the time to do it, when you have a society that's truly connected spiritually. And that's where maybe the native indigenous histories that talk about the star people, maybe that's why there's stories of them being contacted by something outside their realm of reality, because they were deeply connected to the earth and the universe. So as far as I think that's kind of my perspective of the more spiritual side of the house. Because when I got to Skinwalker Ranch, I didn't really observe the sky that much, because I had a pretty good idea of what was already out there. But also, if you just observe the sky, you're just an observer. You can't control what's out there, so you're just interpreting what you can see. Versus the ground is where my focus was, and I treated the ranch as like a crime scene. I wanted to find some type of evidence that connected the phenomenon to people's experiences. But I think there is a positive way that it's going, to answer your question. I don't know if people are going to like the answers in the end. I'm not sure. It seems like it's more divided now than ever. And I think that's probably by design, a little bit. But yeah, I really don't, I'll be honest with you, I really don't follow the UFO narrative that much. I mean, I read about it, and but I don't really invest a lot of my energy into it, because it's so diluted. I really focus my energy on the facts of it, the native cultures and what they were discovering. And that's kind of my focus.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really great to hear. And it makes me think you might be a little skeptical of kind of what might be an official government announcement of some kind.
Yeah,
It's not like
I'm-
it comes out of that.
yeah, I'm always skeptical of government. Period. And I've been working for the government for 26 years. You know? And I get oftentimes I get called like a CIA shill or something. And I'm like, well, when people ask me questions, I answer honestly, and sometimes they don't like to hear what I'm saying. But you know, all the years I've worked in some of these locations, I've seen some very impressive technology. You know, obviously, some of that's coming out to the forefront now. But never have I ever seen anything where I stopped dead in my tracks and said, "That's an alien aircraft," you know, or alien. I've always said that's very impressive tech, and I'm glad it's on our side, basically. But DJ probably understands that as well. You know, air power, global dominance is really the objective. Global reach, global power, global control. That's really the objective of the U.S. government, and they'll do anything it takes to ensure that the United States is ahead of everything, and that includes psyops with these overlapping layers of deception to mask our technology. And I think over the years, some of the stories or UFO mythos that we've all grown up to love have maybe spun its own web that nobody's protected from, including government officials or people in Congress. Because for the last 70 years, all of us here have been raised on alien UFO pop culture, and we all want to believe. I mean, I do. I want to believe. But I think some of that programming has infected different layers of government as well. And they've used their power to try to peek behind the curtain and then realize there's nothing there. But then nobody wants to admit there's nothing there because there's too many egos involved, So what do? You double down and say, yes, it's aliens. Well, if it's aliens or UFOs, then roll them out. What are we waiting for? I mean, I don't understand. It seems kind of bizarre to me. It's like, and if there's aliens here or have visited, I kind of like the theory of maybe a drone type alien craft landing here millions of years ago to observe an extinction event and collect that data, like the dinosaurs being like that type of technology was left over. And I could see something like that. I kind of believe that. But as far as daily visitors, I don't know. I mean, I stay open to it all. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. People have reported it. So I don't know. It's kind of a weird background that I have, which gives me a different insight than most people, I guess.
Well, many things can be true. You've seen some amazing tech in the places that you've been exposed to some of that. And there's also some areas where the government wouldn't fly craft that they have been seen, that you just wouldn't fly them over suburban areas because you're exposing that technology in ways that wouldn't happen. Right. And then also the people that you and I and everybody on this program here know that have the most insight, like Lou, like Chris, like David Grush have said, some of this, what we're displaying to you is not tech that's ours and is not something that we have the ability to do yet at this point. So I think it's a mixture. There's a mixture of everything that, like you said, be open to everything.
Yeah. I think a lot of also on top of that, people make these claims, but also you find their background. They've never worked in locations where new tech is developed and tested. So they have become an outsider looking in. And the perception is it is aliens. And especially with Navy pilots or Air Force pilots, there is an ego involved. And if you see something in the skies that they don't understand, and they automatically think it's alien, or they automatically think it's, well, that's not our technology. Well, they wouldn't know because it's a need-to-know basis. And when it comes to advanced technology, there's a small handful of people that operate in that world, and you're not going to know about that tech until it needs to be released to the public. So there's people over the years I listen to people, and then I look at their background, and I'm like, well, you can make those claims, but you've never worked anywhere where this tech is. All of our whistleblowers are just people who've worked on the outside in. You don't see people coming from the heart of the DOE or Area 51, like besides Bob Lazar or whatever, coming forward in a mass group of people saying, no, here's the aliens, here's the UFOs. It's always these select people. And if you look at their background, you realize, well, they've never worked in these areas. I have, just because of my luck and my background, because I think, and DJ, you'll understand this, every PL1, priority level 1 asset in the government, from nuclear weapons to advanced technology to even Air Force One, is protected by a human element with a weapon. and that's been my career my whole life.
Right.
And
Right.
and I can only imagine if there's aliens or UFOs, they're heavily protected by
Sure.
individuals, you know.
Sure.
So I don't know. I mean,
Well, that's what Dave is saying. Is he's saying that people who have been in contact with that contacted him and say these are programs you need to know about because it's being paid for illegally,
Right.
and that's the problem. Is that it's illegal, that Congress doesn't know about these.
Yeah.
There's also a component that I'll offer to you about this that comes from the aerospace and aviation side of the house. There are certain things that, on the contrast, you wouldn't have been trained as a police officer, but they've been trained in terms of aeronautics and understanding of aerospace and how flight happens, how propulsion displays itself, these types of things that some of these crafts don't comport with Bernoulli's theorem and things that we believe that we're not able to do yet. Some we are, some we're not. And so that's where it comes from. So there are areas of the things that you know and you've seen that they don't know, and there are also areas that they've gone through training in aerospace and aeronautics and all these that you haven't been trained in. So they're having an eye for that and saying, "Wait a minute, I'm seeing three-dimensional movement at speeds that nothing should be able to do that, or that the physical body couldn't maintain itself in that type of an environment." So there's a lot of
right.
Like you said, we got to keep our minds open, and also, we got questions in the chat. So we got it. Money Nathan, you went last, so it's Deb's turn.
Yeah,
Miss
actually,
Debs.
I have
Miss
so
Debs.
many things I want to say. One is that I feel like you're a kindred spirit because you're on the same path that I am, with people being a central part of this conversation. I, of course, would be curious if you've explored Shintoism, also have looked at hunter-gatherer cultures that are going on nowadays, because I think that there is a common thread, and it kind of reminds me of the aerial school kid who said we're now getting too technologed.
Mhm.
Like, so I feel like that is the crux of it. But the question I have real quick, you mentioned the Bigelow hasn't released his information from the research, and I really wanted to address that real quick, because sure enough, even though there's tons of stuff that came out from NIDS, the real research that was done is still not available to the public. And I know this is going to be some speculation, but why do you think Bigelow will not give the public the results from the research?
I think, he's a very interesting individual. I enjoyed working with him, and I've had some good conversations with him. But I think some of the research he's afraid to release because it might be embarrassing. It might not be what he believes is real. I think the public would probably tear it apart, some of the evidence. I know specifically some of the things with orbs and dust particles that I debunked while I was on Skinwalker Ranch. He really believed, and to this day, he still believes it. And it's called backscatter. It was like the first time I went out there, I debunked it, and talk about pissing some people off, because for over a decade, people were pushing this forward on him as legitimately paranormal. And I'm like, no, as a photographer, I immediately recognized it for what it was. And I think that's a big bulk of his research. It also, I don't know, he's kind of strange about that. He likes to hoard the information and give out pieces when he can. So I don't know if he'll ever release it. But I think some of it will be probably torn to pieces, some of the stuff. Because if it's not, I think everybody's pretty much tired of, when it comes to ufology and this topic, I think everybody's tired of the single frame images and 10-second video clips. We need 30 images of an event, or an hour-long video of something. We need more data. We can't just keep, seeing a picture and then throwing that down as like the sword you're going to fall onto. No, that's not enough evidence. We need more evidence of stuff. I'm specifically tired of it, because people will email me stuff and say, hey, what do you think about this? I'm like, it's another still image. I need 30 more of this event, And like Skinwalker Ranch, I have probably 5,000 images of Skinwalker Ranch from 2010 to now. And if you look at my images, there's nothing on there that I would say is anomalous or out of the ordinary. I've recorded, artifacts, weird, some footprints, stuff like that, large canine or large wolf print that I had experience with in 2010 and 2015. other than that, it's just beautiful landscapes and beautiful pieces of the property. And I took lots of pictures of the skies and stuff while I was out there, and that's why I donated that whole archive to the University of Maryland for a couple of reasons. One, so more eyes can see my photography and maybe see things that I missed, you know. But also to document that timeline that's gone forever. You know, the 2008 to 2016 timeline is pretty much gone. Now there's a TV show and everything else, and that photography captures that moment of time, which I believe is probably the most important moment of time, because you had a time where individuals were out there alone trying to figure the property out with very limited equipment. We didn't have any working cameras, like video cameras out there, and that's just how it was. But I think Bigelow did that on purpose because it forced us to connect to the property and invest our energy out there. And I think that's the key to it. I always say it's not the scientific method that matters, it's the indigenous method or the native method that matters when it comes to these locations. So I don't know. But that's kind of a long-winded response to your question. I apologize.
So it wasn't pure frugality that he didn't have all these things.
Right. Yeah. And maybe one day he will release. I think he should release it. I think all the data for the USAF should be released to the public. It was all paid for taxpayer money. It needs to be released. If they want to say it's a national security, like I've heard this several times now, that people view the ranch during the USAF period as a national security risk. Nobody ever once uttered those words to me that I was working out there looking for national security risks. And if so, then how come we never did a proper changeover with the new team that came out there? You can't, hand over a property and say, oh, it's a national security risk. But we're going to keep all the data. So good luck. What are you talking about? That makes no sense. And this is where my frustration comes in. If there was this, like we were just left in the blind for a lot of stuff. If there was better open communication, the project probably would have succeeded a lot better. But you had these individuals that just hoarded information and took information, like collected data on us as well. And then years later, I have to find out about stuff in a roundabout way. I'm like, this is so stupid. This is why the project failed. There was no open lines of communication. So of course it's going to fail. And as you know, being in the military, if you don't have communication, you're going to fail. And that's what happened.
Stovepiping, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. Courtney connected, ma'am.
I just have to put this up because it was behind my chair. I'm in my office today rather than in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So this is for some of the people also who are in the chat. And I know everybody has been seeing Bix just made an announcement today about the books. I got mine because I submitted an actual essay about, survival of consciousness when he put out his essay contest. But people can now get the books, and I've heard people are getting them outside of the people that competed. So I think that's really nice that they're making them more open to the public.
Yeah, I actually I called Column up and I asked for a copy because I want to drop a copy off at the TLC office at the Department of Veteran Affairs in Wichita, where the hospice is at, where veterans are on their last days. I think reading those books would be great for them.
Good. I was going to ask you, one, if you had your copy, and then two, if you're still in contact with Calm. But my question is actually a separate question. It's something that you and I have talked about on the side as a sidebar thing over the years. And you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. But there's been this thing out there, and it would be good if you could dispel it for once and for all. That those security guys, those initial security guys like yourself who came in on hire in the early days, I'm talking early days, which you were one of those folks, that there was some other study going on with the people who were actually employed at the ranch. And, I know that this is controversial, but it would be good if you could speak with it on it. You don't have to, or maybe how it got started. And was it resolved? Because I know you and I talked about this probably 2 years ago. So I'm just wondering if there was any resolution to that.
Yeah, that's a good question. And of course, I'll answer anything. I mean, I have nothing to hide or I'm very open about everything. There's a podcast, the 2012 Paracast podcast with an officer named Chip, who talks about that in great detail about being used as a guinea pig out there, or what they felt as a guinea pig. And I've actually heard those same words uttered to me in person by an individual, who I won't mention his name, but it kind of caught my attention. But there was some type of data being collected on us as well. We had MRIs done in 2011, or I had an MRI done in 2011, and that MRI data eventually made its way into a Word or some type of PowerPoint documentation, where my data is on there. Not my MRI itself, but my MRI data is on there, as well as some other individuals who worked on the ranch. And that document was most likely probably used to push the Kona Blue, which would be USAF 2.0, because I think it was Gary Nolan who said in that Tucker interview that in 2011 he was approached by the CIA and an aerospace company. Well, that was definitely Kit Green and Bigelow Aerospace who approached them, because he showed those images on Fox News, and I immediately recognized
bad.
Yeah, and I recognized those images, not my scans, they're not mine, but I seen that document. And I was like, wait a minute. And then that matched the timeline, because in 2011, I remember 2011 very well, and people were scrambling for data. And lo and behold, it was for the Kona Blue project, trying to get funding for that, which is, hey, I mean, I wish we would have kept on with the funding. I wanted to be out there forever and continue my own personal research out there. I felt like I was onto something. And to have the carpet kind of pulled out from underneath me, kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. But I'm thankful that Bigelow funded it on his own afterwards for several years, because it allowed me more time out there. But yeah, there was definitely some type of data being collected on us. And I mentioned this last week to some people. We talked about this up in Utah. Early on in 2019, 2020, I was pretty upset about it, angry and confused, because I didn't have all the answers, But now, looking at it now, I think that if we want to talk about disclosure or understanding the phenomenon, it's going to come with some sacrifices. And if I was able to kind of help push that ball forward, then I'm okay with that. I just wish there was better communication back then, and even after. I've had to go great lengths to get some answers. I've been to Washington, D.C. now 3 separate times, talking to people behind closed doors, and I've gotten some of the answers, because I'm not just representing myself. I'm representing a small group of guys who were involved during that 2008, 2016 timeline. And I need to get closure for my kids and for my family, and make sure I didn't have any harmful things happen to me physically. So I've had 2 follow-up MRIs since then. I get physicals every year, and everything seems to be. I have a little bit of thyroid issue that's monitoring. That's about it. But during my time out there was no NIDS, there was no Column, Bigelow, Jay Stratton. Those guys were not out there at all. Maybe one day a visit a year, but not out there, boots on the ground, day in, day out, collecting data, doing investigations, doing the experiments, securing the property. That was all done by me and a few other guys. And that's why I stay relevant and talk to people, because I refuse to let that story, or I refuse to let that timeline disappear in the ether. It seems with the TV show now, it's absolutely irrelevant. And I get there's a TV show, and I'm totally proud support of those guys out there doing their best to collect data. And I'm fascinated by some of the things they find and the equipment they have. But it's just, for me personally, it was just to close a chapter in my life for my kids. And this last trip, it's pretty much closed, because I brought my kids out there. And it was a big deal for me to kind of go through that and bring them out there to see all the sacrifices I made throughout the years, and being alone out there. It definitely changed me forever as a person. And
wow.
And I'm happy to talk about, and this is kind of why I like the community, because I'm around people that are very interested in this topic, as I am too, because I'm still on the path as well, And yeah, sorry for the long-winded answer.
If this is considered weird, then we're all weird together.
Exactly.
And that's totally cool. So we have a bunch of fan questions here, and we'd like to get them in as quick hitters, because we don't have a whole lot of time. We'd like to keep you for about 15 more minutes so we can get through these, and then whatever. Okay, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
All right, so Duncan says, first of all, before we go, does anybody here think that Bob Bigelow was trying to look like Magnum PI with the mustache and the hair? Anyone on the panel? No? Okay. All right, we'll go with Duncan's question. It's probably better. All right, so go ahead, Debs.
Anyone, why the malevolence from the phenomenon? Why destroy property, cattle? Why induce stark animal terror in innocent human beings if you can travel dimensions or time? Again, why the malevolence?
I think like people reporting a negative outcome, basically, or a negative experience.
No. What he's talking about is why would an intelligence, if this is attributed to a non-human intelligence, I think they're asking you why would that sort of intelligence inflict harm on a cattle and hurt him that way?
Yeah, the whole cattle mutilation thing. We had cows out there the whole 6 years and horses, and we never had a mutilation out there. We never had anything that you would consider like a class A mutilation. We had cows fall out from being sick or whatever. But I grew up in Kansas, and we raised horses, and I was around cows my whole life. So for me, a lot of the stuff at the ranch was just normal ranch dynamics. It wasn't
no mutilations.
No, nothing like you see during the NIDS time or even now, whatever. But I don't think there is a negative NHI out there. I think that there is a consciousness, native energy that's out there, the great earth spirit, the creator, whatever you want to call it. And if you're out there trampling on, trespassing on sacred grounds, you're going to get your card pulled. I think that's kind of where I'm at with it. I think that if you go out there with ill intentions or a negative mindset, that energy attached to you follows you home, presents itself as a warning, as in, you trespass on my land, now I'm trespassing on yours. Tread lightly. That's kind of where I'm at with that.
All right, let me see if I can further define the question for them, because we would have to know this. Do you believe that there are cattle mutilations, that they happen, and that they're explicable or inexplicable?
Honestly, I don't believe so. I think they're naturally caused, or maybe caused by a human element. I know specifically, and this is where NIDS kind of dropped the ball. NIDS, hats off to them. They collected a lot of data during their time, but none of them are trained investigators. They've never been through an investigation school or have a PI license. So they didn't do a proper investigation. If they would have talked to more locals. And some of the locals I talked to said that they were poaching. Some of the locals were poaching cattle from individuals in that area and making it look like a cattle mutilation.
Wow.
Yes, that's something that I found very interesting and kind of caught me by surprise. And I was like, interesting. But that doesn't explain, because there's still people out there reporting mutilations in that area. So maybe there is something to it. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know is a good answer for a lot of what happens in the phenomenon. Courtney Connected, would you like to read this one, ma'am?
Could it be fair to say skinwalkers and all the relative scary events could be seen as merely subversion tactics by NHI to deter generations of people from delving too far into the facts?
Oh,
it could be. Could very well be. I mean, that's a theory I never even thought about, but that could make sense.
Good one, Mick. This is our buddy Mick from the UK. Let's see, what else do we have? Do we have some more, Nathan? Okay. There's some there. Duncan's kind of bagging on Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, they're making a TV show, but they're also doing a lot of real science out there. And
yeah, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't make it to the show. I was just out there a couple days ago, and they were showing me stuff that probably won't make it to the show. But yeah, there is a show, so it's going to get criticized, and some of the stuff I can't defend. I wasn't there, so. But I know that I've said this before, that area of land, that specifically Skinwalker Ranch, is bigger than a TV show. It's bigger than my photography. It's bigger than a government contract. There is real history there that needs to be documented and preserved. And that is the answer to a lot of these questions, is understanding what cultures were out there, why were they out there. It's fascinating to me that I found artifacts that go back to the Paleo period. That changes a lot of stuff. I think that's probably the most significant, and this is just my own opinion, but if you line up the whole time frame of Skinwalker Ranch, from the Terry Sherman to NIDS to Bass, even now, if you lay out the evidence, I think finding an artifact that goes back 10,000 years ago is probably the most significant piece of evidence to come out of that property, because everything else is up for interpretation. You're observing things in the sky, what else have it, child mutilations. There's all kinds of ways you can go, but finding evidence that historically connects the land 10,000 years ago to an ancient culture or tribe is mind-blowing. It's a huge discovery, and it's being backed now by individuals like Chris Roberts, who represents the archaeology team for Utah. And he's saying, hey, this is a huge find. This is incredible, because this changes a lot of stuff. And then you went to Basin.
I'm curious now that you mentioned some of the things that you've seen that they've seen. I'm curious if you think, what do you make of the provocation that they use in terms of the rockets to stimulate a response? Do you have a take on that?
I don't know what the purpose of that is. I don't understand it. I mean, I don't know if it's just for entertainment, or we did a similar experiment. It was actually 4th of July, 2012 maybe. I was instructed to get bottle rockets and put them in different areas of the mesa and light them off, which it was terrifying because there was a fire hazard at the time, and there was a no shooting fireworks. Well, we shot them off anyways. I did, to see if it would stimulate activity, and there was nothing reported, nothing out of the ordinary reported. So I don't know. I don't understand the whole. I think when it's all said and done, when the TV shows are over, I'm talking in the future, the only thing that's going to remain is the history that's on that property. That's the only thing that you're going to be able to prove, is the history and maybe the magnetic anomaly that's probably leftover meteorite that crashed the whole Uinta Basin. That's just my prediction. I remain hopeful that the team finds an incredible discovery of something that I missed. And I think they will. I think they probably will collect a lot more. Obviously, they've collected a lot more data than what NIDS and Bass did so far. I mean, they have an amazing set of tools out there at their disposal, and more hands-on people.
Oh yeah.
There's a whole team of guys out there all the time working. I know Caleb Bench, Thomas Winterton, and Eric Barter out there every single day, and they're going through data. They were going through data when I was out there of stuff. Now, whether that makes it to a TV show, who knows? I don't know.
But it's what he's saying there for the audience is they're actually out there conducting real science. They're not doing it just for the cameras. They're collecting data because Brandon has hired them and asked them to do that, and that's what they're doing. Yeah. So, Nathan, could you read the... I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Nathan, could you read these next two, and then please go with your own, sir?
Sure thing. All right. So where can we find information about the artifacts?
So the skinwalkerranchportfolio.org is the website I think I posted. That data is going to be attached to that website. The University of Maryland's kind of helped me categorize some of the stuff that I found throughout the years. And there'll probably be more stuff coming down the pipeline that I'll release myself.
Awesome. And I'm just typing that up so I can put it on screen. I know it's in your tag as well. So
yeah, Julie had it in there. I just don't know where it is right now, but yeah. And so were you there when Lukatsky and Knapp and so forth visited?
I was not there, but I know the individual who was there, Gene Dietz, who was the ranch manager for 20 years, who I just talked to in person a couple of days ago. We were talking about that.
Okay. Yeah, that must have been a interesting time. This one right here, Marley Woods, 42 miles from Arrowhead, saying a lot of people want to know where Marley Woods is. But anyway, go ahead, Money Nathan, sir, please, with your question.
Yeah, well, I think I resonate a lot with what you said, Chris, tonight about the preservation of this history that we are really kind of scratching the surface on. And I hope folks are paying attention to what you're saying, because you're a person that's been really close to a lot of these things, and I think you've got a very measured and balanced perspective on this entire story. And a lot of folks kind of run away with their own fantastical ideas, but you seem to keep a pretty level approach to it, and I really appreciate that. So, I recognize that like let's take the United States, for example. We do a pretty good job in some respects of preserving some of this ancient history. We have a lot of national parks that try to do justice to some of these places that are, but they're everywhere, right? They're all over the country, and many of them, they're not protected, they're not preserved, they're not, they're basically paved over and built on top of, right? And so, as a person that has this really strong and deep connection to this kind of legacy of humanity and humanity's relationship with the earth, are you saying that what you'd like to see for Skinwalker Ranch is almost kind of an official effort to protect, preserve, and tell the story of what's there, rather than kind of continue to poke and prod at it with sticks?
Yeah, I think that's the more important aspect, is preserving that land and respecting the cultures that were there a long time ago and protecting that property. I don't think shooting rockets, if that's that's out of my realm of expertise. I'm not, so maybe they are getting adequate data from that. I don't know, but I think Bigelow kind of had the right idea. The low tech connecting to the property through consciousness effort is the key to this, because that's what I did. I spent years out there sleeping on the mesa with the dogs at night, spiritually connecting to the self. In the summertime, I would walk on top of the mesa with my boots off and ground myself. This is all before a TV show or any of this stuff. This is what I was doing just naturally, connecting to the property, just because I felt like that was the right thing to do. And I was discovering these artifacts in areas of interest. And I think that's the key to a lot of this stuff. But I think if you tackle this subject with a mechanical mindset, you're just going to keep beating a dead horse, basically. I don't know what you're expecting to get results. Like I said, you can only observe the sky. The ground is where you're going to find the truth. And I showed him a cave that I found in 2012, a cave that I pulled 2 big wolf traps out of. And there was 3 different caves I found on that property. And I wish I had the resources to explore those caves more. And it appears the new team does. So I'm very interested to see what they find, or really I am. And I don't know. Like I said, I think when it's all said and done, hopefully we can just go back to preserving the land. I think that's the most important part.
Yeah. Thank you.
I love your perspective on this. It's just because, that ultimately that's what it is. Like, I watched this show on one of the Discovery channels about this guy who was digging for gold, and it was about his grandfather up in Alaska and how he had really gotten into digging, and then he sort of took it on the road, and he was doing it in New Zealand, and I ended up seeing him in Central America, where he went to a mine and they were digging for gold, and I was like, man, look at the absolute destruction that they laid into this entire ridge line for a couple little chips of gold metal. I can't even say how worthless gold is, that you would go and destroy land like that and not even think, I'm carrying on my grandfather's legacy. Guess what? Your grandfather had a stupid legacy of just destroying the land for a couple pieces of gold. Literally, flakes.
Yeah, I've visited several sites where I've been a little disgusted of the actions of the individuals just looking for what treasure or whatever, and not honoring the land where they get this gold fever, and this tunnel vision.
Yes,
it's weird. Destroyed. Yeah, I don't know. It is kind of sickening to a point.
Sorry to bring that up, but it just made me think of that when you talk about respecting the land, and it made me think of that. And all of a sudden, there's those big dump trucks with the wheels that are like 25 feet high, and it used to be this beautiful area and beautiful terrain feature. But anyway, I'm sorry, I digress. Who's next? Is it Money Debs?
Yes, I actually have a controversial question to ask.
Ooh.
I really can't resist. You mentioned Bob Lazar working at Area 51. Do you think that he has provided enough evidence, having worked there, to support what he said?
I don't know. I think at the timeline, he was 29 years old, and he worked there for 10 days total. And I think before him, there was over 10,000 employees who worked at Area 51 before him. So I think looking back at it now, I think maybe he was subjected to an integrity test where they show you something to see what you're going to do. And he did probably what you're not supposed to do and run around and tell people you're working on spaceships or something. And I think that might have been an integrity test that he failed and just went with it. I don't know. I mean, I'm fascinated by his story, but then if you listen to Bob Bigelow's interview on MysteryWire.com, Bob Bigelow gave him an actual research building to continue his research back in the late 80s, early 90s or whatever. And what did he do? He just put furniture in it. So I don't know, that speaks a lot about your character. If you're getting an opportunity to continue in this work and you just use a facility to store furniture, I think that's suspect. I think more people should probably be like, hey, maybe his story isn't. I don't know. I want to believe his story, but I go back to my professional background, which is working at these locations. And I don't know, it just seems bizarre to me. But some of the things he says, I want to fully believe, with the technology side of it, Is it ours or is it somebody else's? Who knows? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out one day.
People are complicated,
Yeah.
We really are. Let me see. It looks. All right. So Julie's got one last question, and then we're gonna go with Cabby goodbyes. So,
Right.
were you ever privy to the purpose of the experiments they had you do? Perhaps permittivity? Is that what that is? Permittivity is affected by the magnetic anomalies and such. I love it. Julie's favorite suffix is and such. So what's going on? Were you ever privy to the purpose of the experiments they had you do?
No.
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 Okay.
It was kind of left in the dark about some things, which is why I was kind of confused about the whole OSAP program in regard to Skinwalker Ranch. And I had questions that I have answers for now, basically, but I'll keep that private for now.
We're keeping it top secret.
For
So
now,
step
yeah.
off. All right. So Courtney connected, apparently disconnected, because she's having trouble. I'm hoping that Bigfoot hasn't yanked the internet cable out of the side of her cabin over there. But anyway, so we'll go with Cabby goodbyes, beginning with Debs, please.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think we probably could have talked for hours and hours about what this means for humanity and that connection that you've discovered between being human and connecting to this magnetic field and what that could mean. So thank you for sharing all of that. I think that gives a lot of people food for thought. And of course, thank you for sharing your history with us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Chris,
Man.
it's been a real delight. Just really enjoyed this conversation. Steph said we could talk for a very long time. I'm a big fan of your photography. I hope that you've got plans to continue shooting and doing displays and portfolios. I think people would love to see that. To me, photography kind of embodies some of the elements of the phenomena that we're fascinated by, and that's this. There's this moment in time, there's this objective thing that we're looking at, but it also is evocative. There's this evocative quality that is less tangible. And I feel that, in this conversation tonight, we've had a chance to experience a little bit of that evocative feeling of your experiences and what they get us thinking about our place on the earth in history, our legacy as a human species. So I really appreciate your time with us, and I hope we get a chance to speak with you again.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Yeah, my DMs are always open for conversations for sure.
Awesome.
Chris, there's so many things to like about you. It's kind of like where to start. I think if I were to encapsulate tonight's conversation, it would kind of be like take care of the earth, love the earth, connect to its energy, see how it enriches and invigorates you physically and mentally, spiritually, and I think if we can follow that example, all of us, what you're doing, I think we'll be better off as people and be better custodians of this planet. You know, it exists with us, and we need to synthesize with it instead of thinking I'm me, I do whatever I want, and this thing is here, and I just drive around on it, and I don't care about it.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
I'm with you.
Thank you. Yeah.
As an Air Force guy, you know, obviously I'm very proud of the Air Force. I know you are, but knowing there's somebody like you who can be an example to other young troops and people that are in active duty today and people who have retired, who are really angry and bitter and screaming about something, and you're kind of like, you're someone that you can't fit neatly into a box. It's not a round hole or a square peg. It's a sort of a geometric shape that's not, you know, it's not symmetrical. And people, that's what people want. It's either round or it's square.
Yeah.
That's it. There's only two ways you can be, and you're not that.
No, definitely not. My career in the Air Force was definitely, you know, I've always stayed true to who I am, and which was a good thing and a bad thing. You know, I definitely made some people mad because I'm very opinionated, and I have no problem speaking the truth. And sometimes people don't want to hear the truth. So
I was the exact same way.
Yeah.
I was people that knew me in active duty, you know, would say that, but then again, I still have some friends that are, you know, that are like brothers because they know like how much I care and value their friendship and brotherhood.
I mean, I respect all, but I grovel to none. So that's kind of my mindset. I respect everybody, but I will not grovel for anyone.
I love it. I feel like we would have been good friends if we would have met on base.
Probably so.
So once again, thank you. I hope you'll come back and join us again for another conversation where we can bug you about stuff, and then we can compare Bob Bigelow to Magnum PI. Okay.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again for having me. I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody's time.
Yeah, please pump out anything that you want to talk about, your website. We will have this, obviously, this will be in the show notes for everybody to see.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah, people that see the show notes are on YouTube, and it will be up on the podcast tomorrow. But what would you like to tell people where they can find you, follow you, and what's important to you?
I'm on X or Twitter, Chris Bartel, SWR. Feel free to message me or questions. I'll answer everybody. And then Skinwalker Ranch Portfolio.org is the website of the University of Maryland. That's also helping me write a memoir about my photography and stuff. And so that's gonna be pretty cool. Eventually, it'll be released with the photography stuff. So I'm happy about that.
Awesome.
Well, I'm proud to be your colleague. What an awesome guy. On behalf of Mr. Bartel, Debs, the Courtney Disconnected, and Money Nathan, this is DJ saying peace out. One love. We'll see you down the road, and we're always wondering what's up around the bend.
Take care.